everybody. Thanks for watching. So real quick, I'm gonna get right into this video, right? So we want to get into the establishment of America, right? Establishing this country and what led up to it. And to understand that, we can look at what's been basically taking place today, right? So we understand the whole history of Native Americans. We understand about the Moors now, but all we really got to do is look at recent history and to go back and look at the conquest by the Europeans and see it's not that different from the establishment of America, right? So it's important to understand, one, you had Europeans come out of nowhere seemingly and began to colonize anywhere where there's melanated people. Now, America was no different from Africa, but something happened, of course. So when you understand, right, what's going on in Africa right now, Africa is a huge landmass that's full of different countries with a lot of natural resources, right? And once these people got their hands on Africa, they've been mining Africa for resources ever since then, right? So basically the same thing happened before with America. So if you understand and you look at it, and we understand now the Moors were already in America. They already had things set up. So what happened? Now, with Africa, we can see the Europeans come in there with some type of deal. And it's a deal either for, trade, or back then it was religion, bringing religion into the territories. And we see that with the conquest of Columbus and what the Spaniards went out and did to a lot of these South American civilizations. They went out there to spread the religion, and they slowly traded until they infiltrated, and eventually they took over. And we've seen this happen in Africa as well. But you got to look at America, right? North America, where the Moors was ruling, and what was already here. Now, a lot of people ask me about Tartaria, and I have a whole video coming out on that soon, a whole DVD, because there's a lot to get into with that whole situation. But we have to look at it this way and say something was here before the America we know today. And then now that's been covered up. But we got to look at how this came about. So you picture it and you have this understanding of America and the resources that are here. And what happened? Just like we see today with the puppets in Africa and all these other countries, what do? The powers that be, they send somebody out there and they run the country they colonized. So we see with like Saddam and, Gaddafi and these other dictators or rulers that was in these countries, they were sent there. They were allowed to rule and dictate, and they had an agenda. They had orders they had to go off. And eventually what happened? They defy these orders. The government stages a coup. A coup happens and they dethrone the ruling power that's in place. And another puppet is put in place to control things. So now you have to look at America in the same context where the Masons are sent over here. The so-called founding fathers, they're sent to America. They're running America. So what led up to the American Revolution, right? What happened? Talked about this before. We had the colonists and the people that's ruling realizing that the controlling power, which would be King George III in England, is not treating us fairly. It's not running things correctly. We don't like how things is run. We are basically living here. We have to run these people. So we understand how the society is supposed to be run. So you guys are levying these crazy taxes on us, not allowing us to have enough gold to pay our bills. And then we come up with colonial script, our own money, right? What's been the whole system, the whole problem with America? Every time a nation comes up and they want to put out their own gold or their own currency, there's a takeover. So this takeover happens and the old regime is ousted, somebody else is put in place, right? So now you have to look at it and say, we had this issue in America where the colonists and the founding fathers realized that Britain was basically coming down too hard. They wasn't going to allow them to be, free and sovereign on their own to run the country the way they seem fit. So we had the American Revolution, right? And everything that basically happened. So you have to equate that to what we've been seeing around the world with all these coups and everything that's been taking place and why they have been so adamant to not allow it to ever happen again, because they understand, one, they lost before. And they understand once a coup happens, once the people who they put in power began to understand and try to change things, it could lead to them losing a country for who knows how long, right? It's a long time before they got America back. So coups happen. But look at it in America. You had the Masons, you had the so-called founding fathers, basically stabbing, King George III, the crown, England in the back. And, the war happened and they lost, right? Powers that be lost. And then you had the formation of the United States, right? This country coming together, Constitution, Declaration of Independence, all that stuff happened. And it was like free and independent from King George III and revolution, and things are going to be different. Things are going to change. We've been seeing this all over the world for decades, for a long time. All these countries wanting the same thing, and that's this independence. Everywhere you look, you're seeing a country have independence. Independence from who? Independence from what? How do you have independence in a country that is yours, right? So we see, like in Ethiopia, we see in Eritrea, these independence, these constitutions in these African countries, right? How is that? How do these countries have constitutions and independence? Independence from where? And that gets you into the understanding of who's really running things and why they would want independence away from these people. So what would follow this? Once they got control of these countries or what have you, we know what happened in South America. They've been in there. And we had them send in the same thing I showed you with North Africa. Once they controlled and conquered North Africa, what did they do? They sent their people. So we had the Romans go over to Spain, right? Mix in with those people all throughout Northern Africa, right? Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, mix in and blend in with these people. Same thing back then with South America, where they basically was paying people to go in and mix out as much as they could dark-skinned people. So you had the whole thing, the Metu, I believe it was called, to where they basically was giving Europeans benefits to go ahead and mix in with light-skinned black people, because they felt like if it's a light-skinned black person, 9 times out of 10, they already have in their bloodline a white person. So mix in with the lightest skin, black woman you can find and have kids. And then that child would marry someone white, and then boom, they get melanin back in the bloodline. And this is what was going on. So as I said, European immigration. Some countries like Brazil actively encourage and even subsidize European immigration as a means to whiten the population. The belief was that the influx of European immigrants and subsequent intermarriage would dilute the African and indigenous ancestry in the population. However, this wasn't simply about paying Europeans to have children. It involved various policies like attracting European immigrants and fostering a cultural environment that favored European norms. Beyond simple whitening, it's important to note that Blaqueamento wasn't solely, which means whitening, wasn't solely about breeding out black people. It also involved efforts to marginalize and assimilate indigenous populations and promote a vision of national identity that favored European heritage. The historical context of slavery and racial hierarchies deeply influenced these policies, resulting in ongoing racial inequalities and discrimination. So we had the Conquest, right? Conquest, raping these countries of resources, growing in power and wealth in the process. Then they would send their people in there to basically breed in and mix out the dark-skinned people. So it would look like later on today that these people was already there. I mean, you look at Argentina. Argentina is super white. We know the indigenous people was as black as me, right? Same thing with Puerto Rico, right? They come in, they mix in. And they did this throughout the world. They did this in Northern Africa. And now we have the whole term, the Sub-Saharan Africa. So they can basically steal North Africa when we know the history of what these people did and that they came in and conquered, right? So we got to look at America and see this is the same thing that happened. The only difference was what? We fought back. They didn't expect the revolution to happen. They didn't expect the people to rise up. America is the wild card. And it's what is America. So if you think about revenge, and that's how I look at this whole thing, it's the ultimate fucking revenge. Because these people that's in this country today, the people that's, blue Americans, right? They have within them the bloodlines, the founding fathers, and the people that fought in these revolutions and fought against the powers that be today, right? That's in their blood. So to them, this is the ultimate revenge to get these people back. And since they know this bloodline exists within these people, they want to stamp it out. They want to stamp out any hope of revolution or anything that would instill what basically beat them before, which was what? Fucking unity. So we have been driven. Remember, I showed you guys the photos going back to the Great Depression, right? Remember, it's supposed to be all this racism, right? Blacks only, whites only. But I showed you guys the photos of black people standing in line in the 20s with white people. The same line, the same soup kitchen line with white folks, right? How was that possible, right? So we seen that there was a change that we have at one point, black and white mingling, mixing together. It wasn't as big as an issue as it is today. And then once the takeover completely happened, which I would say they completely got control over everything around 1935, I would say. But before that, everything was fine. But then we can clearly see that it was an agenda put in place to basically divide and conquer, right? Divide and conquer. So now we have Jim Crow South after this. We have all the racial disparities, all the discrimination and everything that happened to keep the separation because they couldn't allow blacks and whites to unite. So all throughout history, ever since then, it's been exactly that. It's been the separation. And then now that we're on this cusp of this revolution, we're finding the same thing in this day and time, which is this whole racial divide that's been happening. You know, whole Trayvon Martin case, Oscar Grant with Fruitvale Station, everything that's been happening, right? All the shootings up from cops and killing black people. There's always been this constant separation of black and white because it was black and white that beat them in the American Revolution, the War of 1812, the Civil War, and so on and so forth. So they don't want that to happen. But they also know that they're going to need African Americans or black people, period, to move forward, which is why the race mixing is on the forefront of their agenda. And we're seeing it today. Man, you got to understand, and excuse the music if you hear it. You got to understand, like, as I said, our power has always been our influence. And our influence have been there all throughout history, even with slavery being as long as it was and people holding slaves as captives over the years, over time, they would see how good of a people black people are, right? How helpful we are, how smart we are. With us inventing so many things during slavery and after slavery, people would see it. They would be true to themselves and see how much of a contribution black people could have to society. And they didn't want slavery anymore. And they knew that that would be infectious and it would spread throughout time. So it was determined at some point, you got to free the slaves. You got to free them. You got to let these people go because in keeping them, they more and more look like the bad guy. And then you have other countries pointing that out, right? So you have to look at Africa today, what's happening in Burkina Faso, what's going on over there. Eventually, you have to let the people go. Eventually, things are going to change, especially if we're going to need these people going forward. So we're seeing that with the rise of Ibrahim Traoré and what's happening in Burkina Faso and Mali and Niger. And it's what happened before. It's what happened during slavery. So they let us go. They let us free. Made it look like it's a civil war. We won. President Lincoln set the people free. And we were allowed to go and flourish or what have you. Difference is Africa is our continent. It's ours, you know, and America was ours as well. But they didn't dominate and establish themselves all throughout Africa like they did in America, right? We are the minority here, not in Africa. So things have to look way more perfect than it did with America. Because see, in America, these white people are food. They think they won a revolution and they beat England and that we won. And, you know, Britain lost and we are in control. We are running this country. But clear as day, we are not. It's run by oligarchs. It's run by a shadow government. It's run by a royal family. It's run by Rome. So many people is running things. It's not Americans. Clear as day, it's not Americans. Because there's no way if America is running this country that we would allow our people to starve to death while we feed our enemy countries so much fucking money. But what happened in America was the ruling power, the so-called founding fathers, the people that was running the country, realized how wrong things was and things wasn't getting better. And we had the war, as I said, and then the revolution. Things changed, start printing our own money. And basically the same thing, as I said, with Saddam and these other countries that try to print their own money, same type of situation. So we've been seeing the same plan play out in different countries for centuries. centuries. And it's been the same thing. But a lot of people are not putting a finger on it. Why is it that we have a ruling power, which back then was the crown, right? It was the crown. What did the crown do? They exchanged the crown and the royal family for governments, right? For a governmental structure, so the people wouldn't know who the real enemy is. So now when something goes wrong, they know not to go to the monarchy, because they're not running anything. You got to go to the prime minister, the president, the person that's really running things. And it's a puppet post. But really, it's the ruling family, it's the royal family that's running things. And they wanted to get away from that because of what happened to previous rulers. And they know how the people could be relentless and basically go after their fucking heads, right? So they had this establishment of governments which changed everything, right? They learned from their mistake. So you had here in America, Founding Fathers, American Revolution, right? And you have the wars that follow, and it's the same thing we've been seeing. So after the revolution was won, we know we had the War of 1812, we know we had the Civil War, and it was because they had still people in those territories, namely in the South, that were still controlling things and had their hands in how the power structure was going to be ruling things. So once the Congress was put together, and eventually we know those people would be bought off, but they still had interests in these other countries because that's where they came from. France was here, Sweden was here, we know England was here, we know Russia was here, everybody was here. So they had interest still in their other countries, Germany or what have you. So they were still doing things for the ruling interest of the country that they came from until they could really buy into the unity of the United States. So what happens? America becomes free. Those people become sovereign citizens. They own their land. They own the resources that's on their land. And then now you have a huge country of people who believe that they're free and they own the land that they walk on. And the Founding Fathers were smart because they instilled this within the people so that they will believe that they was a part of these United States and they was a citizen and they had stake in the growth of this country, right? So the people would take up arms and fight against King George III, or fight against the British or whoever came over here that wanted to challenge America in its freedom, right? We have people who has gold. We know about the gold rush in San Francisco and everybody coming over to get gold, right? But the problem was, of course, it's United States. It's people that's free and independent. They own their land and they're sitting on all kinds of resources. So they can't do like Africa yet, which go in there and stage a coup, because as vast as the country is, still you have one ruling body, which was, of course, the colonists, the Congress, and it wasn't the same. Either, you can go all the way over to California and do what you got to do, but still the people that's there, the governor, whoever's running the city, the state at that time, is not the end all be all. It goes back to one source. And that's the big thing about having a united country, because you can go and try to infiltrate certain countries, but that country still won't be the end all be all as far as the ruling structure. So having the United States is a big deal. So of course we know what happened. They had to come in and crack that, which they did with the Federal Reserve Act in 1913, and they basically came in through the money system and took over, right? Which is why we have the Founding Fathers' heads on our paper money, because it's basically a spit in their face, letting them know that, hey, we finally took this shit back and we did it using money. We're going to put your faces on it, right? So understand, we've been seeing over the years the same MO. But the Americans believe that, we won. America is free. It's a free country. They're not realizing, they still don't realize that Americans are not in control of America no more, even though all the proof is right there. The fact that we have a Federal Reserve System that controls our money system. We don't know who these people are. We don't know who it is that print our money. Why is our money being printed by an outside country who we don't know who it is, that is loaning our own money back to us at interest? Like, we live in a debt society. How is this American? What's going on? Who do we owe? Why do we owe these people this money? And why can't we just pay them? What is going on? So you got to understand what this whole thing is about, right? And who's in power? Again, revenge. So now I'm going to fucking poison y'all food. I'm going to make y'all obese because y'all are the energy. Y'all are the fucking descendants of the people who beat us, right? That energy lies within y'all. That energy of defiance, that energy of revolution is within these people. So we got to be careful. We got to play it smooth. So meanwhile, I'm going to corrupt these people. I'm going to make them sick. I'm going to infect them with all kinds of diseases and all kinds of shit to keep these people sickly. And Europe, by the way, none of the chemicals we got in our food, they have in theirs. It's banned in Europe. Look at all the pitfalls. People, I'm trying to tell you, y'all think America is beautiful. I'm in Vegas right now. Vegas is lovely, by the way, of course. I've been to so many lovely states and countries or what have you in America, or states, I should say, in America. But I've been to other countries that are far more beautiful. I mean, I showed you guys China, and it's like, why don't we have a city that look like this? Yeah, we got New York City, but it's infested with rats, crime, pollution, right? But you go to these other cities around the world, they are absolutely beautiful. The food is clean. There is no problem. Why? Because they are run by the people. China is beautiful and clean because their people run it. It is run by the people who are taking care of their people. Whereas America is run by our enemies who don't give a shit about us, who are doing this shit on purpose, making the toilets just a little bit lower so that when you take a fucking piss, it splashes on your clothes. You don't even know it. That's the type of sick shit these people do. Where you go to Europe and the toilets are much deeper. I've been all over the world. I've seen the little teeny things that are perfect, that are better in these other countries. We have laws that these people put in place that basically poison the meat, poison the food, the condiments, and nobody is saying anything. So when people are asking me, why is this going on? What's going on? What is this about? It's about finishing what they established a long time ago. But because of the American Revolution, because the people rose up and had a revolution and took this country back, it threw a big ass wrench in their plans to where they had to establish this huge cover up. Imagine if they could just kept slavery gone, right? If they could have just kept things going the way they needed it to go, they would have got to their agenda by now. But this was so much of a wrench in their plan. And now this energy of revolution is out there. This understanding of a deception is loose. So now we got to control everything. We got to cover up history. We got to cover up everything so these people never figure out who they really are and get back to that energy, that understanding. And then now they're using the power, which is the influence of Black people, to drive this whole thing. And then they're using us to sabotage us. And it's been going that way for a long time. And this is what's going on. This is what's happening. Forget all the history. Forget the history. Understand the history, right? Understand the history. Everybody want to talk about this and talk about what happened back then and talk about who did what and talk about the ancient Egyptians and talk about the Moors and everything. Forget that. Understand the context behind it and how it all fits, because that's what people missing. Like, yeah, the American Revolution happened, but in what context? Why? What went along with that? We know about slavery. For what? What was the true reason? To enslave these people to make money? That don't make sense. Why would you bring all these Africans from Africa to come to America to work for you for free when supposedly it's a bunch of Native Americans? You could have just enslaved them here and saved the trip. And I said this before. Do you mean you're going to pack all these people in a boat and bring them across the Atlantic, knowing that it could be an insurrection or these people could die along the way? And if it's about money, you're going to lose whole, crops of people. That's workers. That's money. Whereas if you're enslaving the people who you can't communicate with in the first place, supposedly with the Africans, why not just come to America and do the same thing with the so-called Native Americans, right? Because we know it's bullshit and it was already Black people here, plain and simple. So again, understand the history. We've been seeing the same MO over the years. It's been the same thing. It's been the powers that be, the shadow government, the shadow rulers, sending puppets in to control and run things. And every once in a while, you have a leader step up and change things, step up and go off course. And now they have that kind of sort of in check today. As we've seen what happened with Gaddafi and Saddam, when they go off course or go off script, they have them wiped out. They have coups, they have staged coups, they have all kinds of things that happen to get these people out of power to make sure what happened in America never happens again in these other countries, which is why, again, when I look at Ibrahim Traoré and what's happening in Burkina Faso, I scratch my head because I know these people understand what this means. So I would never doubt these people. I would never put one on them and say, oh, they fucked up or they forgot something. Because it's usually, when you think that way, it's already too late. Usually anything that looks wrong is wrong for a reason. Anything that looks like a victory is a victory for a reason. It's just something you don't understand. The only victory that I see that we ever got on them was the American Revolution, the War of 1812, and the Civil War. Plain and simple. That is the only thing I ever seen. That was the true blue coming together of America as of black and white people coming together to fight against King George III and fight against the powers that be. And they won. Plain and simple. So you got to look at this. And I look at, again, what's happening over there. And I say to myself, these people are not that stupid. And I know people, I had people message me and say, oh, it seems like you're talking bad about him, or you think he's a puppet or what have you. I'm just telling you to be careful, understand history, understand your enemy, understand like the type of promotion and stuff that they give this man and give this situation. They won't do it for no reason. It's done for a reason. And I'm giving you context here because I'm showing you what took place back with the releasing of the slaves in America. Because if you think that, Lincoln's the president, he said, let him go, we let him go. And then when we got set free, everything that happened to us to kind of keep us in check, to make sure we don't go off and really understand ourselves and our history and, what we got going on as far as influence. A lot had to happen for that to come into context. We look at, as I said, we all know Black Wall Street and look at what they was able to do. Look at what black people was able to do, not even 100 years after slavery, right? Not even 100 years. Less than 100 years later, we already grew a fucking town full of black multimillionaires who established their own town that was better than fucking white people's. Understand that they seen it and they had to stop that, and they've been on top of it ever since. So again, going back to Burkina Faso, going back to Africa, understand what's happening. And Africa is the same thing that happened here in America, and them knowing eventually they're going to have to let it go. So slaves were seemingly set free, but do we have police departments and the whole control mechanism, segregation, integration, and all that bullshit, everything that happened after that to basically keep us in check, right? So again, it's not going to look that way in Africa, because to get these people to believe that they're empowered, they're in control, especially in the countries in Africa, they're going to need a lot. So putting a leader in place and making it look like these people are finally doing something that they had the power to do a long time ago, right? Oh, he's surviving assassination attempts. So the way you having these people rally for Burkina Faso and rally for Ibrahim Traoré, why didn't they do the same thing with Patrice Lumumba? And yeah, people rallied for Patrice Lumumba, but he was fucking publicly humiliated. You seen him drag him on the trucks out in the street. Where was the help? Where was the people coming to his aid, understanding that this man was trying to liberate his people, right? The rumors was bullshit, right? So Patrice Lumumba and all the other African leaders, everybody who came out, all the assassinations that happened in Africa, where was the revolution? Where was the people to come out and say, this was wrong, what happened to this man, and we're not going to allow it to happen again? And we know these African people, they understand that their rulers are puppets in a lot of cases, yet they still go along with it. There is no unity of the people coming together to fight against these puppets that's put in place until now. And then now it's happening and it's sticking. So usually what happens is when they see that there is unrest with the people, that the people are marching and protesting, here's how it goes. You guys seen this before. It's the same MO. It's the same thing with Ibrahim Traoré. What they do is, it's always the military. Notice how in every single fucking coup, it's always the military leader that steps up and takes over. And it seems as if, hey, the military leader seeing how bad you was doing things, and he's seeing that you was an evil dictator, and he stepped up to take the country from you. They been came to those generals, they been came to those captains and all those colonels or what have you. They been came to these people way ahead of time and said, hey, if we give you the word, we need you to take this man out. We need you to take over. But really, the power stays in control of the people who've been in power, right? And that's just why people scratch their head when they look at the deal that Burkina Faso got with Russia. And it's like, well, how the fuck they get 85%? I mean, it would make sense if they're still in power and you give them 85%. And they say, okay, we're going to give you 15% to make it look like y'all doing something. And y'all going to have this gold, or y'all can go and build this and do that to make it look like y'all doing something. You got to understand the MO and how this shit has been working for a long time. Plain and simple. I'm not hating on nobody. I'm not trying to stop a revolution. I'm not trying to put nobody down. I'm not trying to make it look like, put a bummer in this man's way, because I really hope that he's real and true. But when I see what I'm seeing and I understand how these people work, I'm scratching my head, and I'm keeping hope alive, and I'm hoping that everything is right and true. But what I'm seeing is a lot of red flags. So now, since I see that, I got to harken on the past. Got to go back to the past and look at what's been happening, look at history, and get you guys into that understanding of how things were established and how things could seemingly look one way, but it's actually not, right? So that's how it's been with America. And it looks like we're free, and it looks like, Americans is running the country, but it's clearly not. All the connections with these other countries, the connections with Rome, the connections with Britain, who we beat, supposedly, who we shouldn't really be having these relations with, but we do. And these people sought to conquer us and control us, but now we have these relations and everything that's going on. And when you look deeper, and the deeper you look, you see who's in control and who's running things. So it's the people looking at it and saying, well, you know what, my ancestors come from Europe. Europeans are in power, so we're in power, right? Not understanding that the hate and disdain that the ruling elite have for American people, that they want to basically do what they've been doing to us. It has nothing to do with you being related to these people or what have you. It's that energy that exists within all of us, the energy of revolution, and the fact that white people united with black people, and they're uniting with black people today, and they see what could possibly happen. So everything has been put in place over the years to keep that from happening, to keep what we've seen happen with the American Revolution in history from ever happening again, so these people can remain in power. It's the same MO. It's been the same MO throughout history. All you got to do is keep looking at it and look closely. It's right there in your face, the same thing. It's the same exact thing. It was used in America for resources until it became privatized, basically. These people own their land, they own the resources, and there's so much paperwork and red tape you got to go through to dig in certain places. And then here's the thing. You have to pay these people, as I said before, a decent wage. You have to pay them what the stuff is worth, or give them a good percentage or what have you. Whereas you can go to Africa and rape it for free, right? Rape it for very little, I should say, right? Completely different, but it's a part of a plan. So again, think about this. Look to what's happening in the news and put it all together. I understand that there's an agenda behind the whole thing, and things are not what they seem. We're going to keep getting into this whole subject, right? And there's a lot more to it as I'm going to get into. But yeah, I appreciate you guys for sticking with me. It's another video I'm putting out. I'm going to be rolling these things up because a lot is happening. A lot is coming up. And I said this is what I'll do. So again, I appreciate everybody who's been sticking with me. Links are in the description for everything. Make sure you join. Join Merkabah Scholar Society. Get the deeper meanings, the deeper videos, right? Link is in the description for all my past videos. You can go ahead and purchase those videos and support. T-shirts below, what have you. Everything is here in the description. Go ahead and grab it and keep watching. I appreciate the support. I appreciate all the questions. I'll see you guys next video. Peace.